Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Prototyping 2D in Unity. My name is Kasanas. We've already taken a look at the game we're going to make, and today we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start off by building our first project and taking a look at importing assets. Okay, so let's go right away. If you haven't already done so, please launch Unity. I'm using Unity 5. If you're not, you can use whatever version you want. I can't guarantee it's going to work out exactly the same way. It probably will, but probably not exactly. If you don't have it yet, head on over to Unity and download the latest version. There's a lot of awesome updates in 5 if for some reason you're still afraid to switch over. Alright, so let's take a look at it right now. Once you launch Unity, this is the window you're going to get. This is the startup window. Alright, we are going to start a brand new project, so I'm going to go over here and say New Project. Afterwards, we're going to have to put in the name of our project. I'm going to call mine Simple Platformer. That should be fine. I'm next going to choose the directory that I'm going to save this in. It's very important that you guys choose a directory that you can find, first of all. Make sure you can find this. And make sure you choose a directory or a drive that has enough space in it to add in all of your assets and your builds. Unity is automatically going to create for you a bunch of directories, some directory structure that it's going to use to maintain its files. So make sure you've got enough space on your drive. Okay? Next, we're going to choose whether this is a 3D or a 2D package. And we are, of course, going to make a 2D platformer. So I'm going to choose 2D. There's only a couple of differences, really, between choosing 3D and 2D. In 2D, we have very specific formats that everything comes in. For example, when you bring a texture and it comes in as a sprite, the camera is in orthographic. Anyway, we're going to take a look at all that in a minute. Okay, so make sure you're choosing 2D. It's highlighted red, so the red one is the one that's going to be. All right. Asset packages, we're not going to bring in anything. Later on, when you guys are building your own games, you might want to bring in some existing asset packages, download some, etc. And that's perfectly great. For this one, we're starting off with a clean package, a clean game. All right. Lastly, I'm going to say create project. Boom. And then it launches. It takes a few seconds here. There we go. And we've got ourselves Unity up and running. This is going to be our game. This is going to be our game. Now, if I take a look, let me drag this over for you guys to see. If I take a look at this directory, Unity K, which is where I said I was going to build it, right there is my simple platformer. It's gone in and built a bunch of different files. Don't touch any of this stuff here. Don't touch any of these directories, all right? Assets right there is the same as this assets right there. So this is a mirrored view. Not even mirrored, it's actually the same. It's just a view of this directory structure, okay? Looking inside, there is nothing in there right now. But if we come over here, we're going to actually be building a bunch of different things. So I'm going to build the directory structure that I like to use right now. You guys don't have to follow this if you don't want to. You guys can have your own method of organization, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to go through and build a bunch of different asset folders right now. So with assets selected, I have a couple of choices. With assets selected, I can right-click and say Create Folder. And my new folder, let's call it Animation. All right, boom, and there it is, animation. If I, once again, right-click in here now instead in the asset area, and I say Create Folder, and I say Audio. Boom, there's my audio. All right, and lastly, if I come over here and I'm in Assets still, and I say Create Folder, and I say Materials. Boom, there's my Materials folder. Okay, so you can see there's 3 different ways of doing it. Choose however you like to do it, guys. There is a million different ways to do things in Unity. You really have to decide which way you like doing it and then do it that way. All right? So I'm going to build a couple more folders in here, a folder, and I'm going to call this one here Sprites. And I'm going to build another one. I'm going to say Create Folder, and I'm going to call this one here Scripts. And I'll build one more for now, Create Folder, and I'm going to call this Prefab. All right, we're not going to use all of these right now. I just wanted to show you how to build that and how we're going to organize everything. If I take a look at this directory again, the assets directory, you can see that everything was actually built on my computer. And this is where all of your files are going to be organized. Okay? So let's take a look at the Sprites folder. What I'm going to do, I'm going to open this. There's nothing in there right now. Nothing in here right now, right? It's empty. That's cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to drag in, actually I'm going to copy in a bunch of, paste, a bunch of different images. So I've got in here my Explorer, my background, etc. You can see I've got a bunch of different things in here. And these are the files that I'm going to be using in the game. This might be all of them, I'm not sure. I just grabbed them really quick. You can see they're all PNG files, right? They're all PNG files, meaning that they've got an alpha and everything else associated with them, which is great. I like to use PNG. Anyway, so let's go back here and take a look. I'm going to move this out of the way. Watch what happens when I click on Unity. Bam. Unity says, whoa, something changed here. Hold on. And it's now going to convert all of these images that I brought in into the image file type that it's going to use. If we take a look here in Sprites, double click and open. All right, there we go. We can now see that all of those files that I dragged into the directory are located here as well. Like I said, this is just simply the same directory as we've seen on the computer itself. Let's take a look at these files to see what they are. They were PNGs. They were PNG files. Texture type is now a sprite. In 2D, we are currently in 2D. That is the mode we are in, and we have a 2D game being built. So we set it up as 2D, which is why this is actually in 2D. Anyway, we actually have this game being built, and whenever you bring a PNG file or a TIFF file or anything else, whatever you bring in here, it's automatically going to convert it to the texture type of Sprite. It is used for 2D and UI. This could be manually changed if for some reason it came in as a texture. You could go and say, oh, something went wrong, and you could automatically manually change it to a Sprite if you want to. But when you bring these things in and you're in 2D design mode, they should come in as a Sprite. All right. If we take a look just below that, we have the Sprite Mode. The Sprite Mode in this case is single. We have two options, single and multiple. And we're going to take a closer look at multiple in the future. But right now, as a quick explanation, single means that it is a single asset. It is a single self-contained asset, meaning there's only the background. There's only, for example, the rocket or things like that. Okay, there's only the close icon. That's what it's saying. If you say multiple, and you would say multiple for things that had revert, make sure it doesn't change. For things like the 2D Explorer right here, where I've got multiple images in there, or this cannon plant where I've got multiple assets in here that I'm going to build something out of later, you would set that up for multiple. Now we're going to take a closer look at that in the future, so don't worry too much about it right now. All right. The last thing I want to take a look at before we take a look at the camera and building our first asset is the size, max size. You can see that background right here. It's a single asset. It is 2048 by 1024. I want to make sure max size matches the largest of the sizes associated with that file itself. And the reason why I want that is if this was lower than this actual size, the actual size of this file, what would happen is Unity would say, okay, something's not right here. I have to compress this into a very specific size. It would compress it down, and it would cause distortions and everything else in your image. All right, so you'll want to make sure that those things all match. Okay, so once we've got that set up, we can go through and check each one. We're not going to do it right now. We're only going to be working with a few of these at this time. And what I want to do is I want to start to build our environment. I really want to start building our first asset. We're not going to go through and build the platforms yet. We'll save that for the next episode. For now, I just want to show you what's going to happen when we start adding different things to this, to our actual scene right here, to our actual scene. This is the game view, and this is the scene view. Currently in our scene view, the only thing we got is our camera. We've got a camera right here, our main camera. Okay, it is currently set up as this is something I want you to take a look at. Currently set up as a projection type of orthographic. You have two choices, perspective and orthographic. I want to switch this into perspective, and some of you might say, whoa, that's weird. We're doing a 2D game here, and he switched it into perspective. Perspective shows depth. That's what perspective shows. Perspective shows perspective of things, obviously, as the name implies. Orthographic is a flattened image, so you don't really see the depth between things. And we'll take a closer look at that in 1 second. You don't normally see the depth between things whenever you have orthographic set up. All right. This is what it comes in normally in 2D. Let's go over here for a second and take a look. This is the orthographic camera. It shows the orthographic frustum right there, and everything kind of falls in place along that line. The perspective frustum, boom, looks like that, and we're getting perspective angles. Okay, so if you're not actually on the main camera, if you don't actually have it up in there, or you're just looking at it like this, and you can see right away whether it is in perspective or orthographic. Okay, in our case, I want it to be in perspective, and the reason why I want to use perspective is because I'm going to be using the inherent properties of the perspective camera to create my parallax between the background and the midground and the foreground. All right, there's ways of doing it through code, but to be honest, this is just easier. You may have to make a few adjustments to your other assets and where they're placed and everything else, and you actually have to make a few considerations because it's going to now show depth. But this perspective camera is going to allow me to have parallax without any code at all. Okay, so make sure your main camera is in perspective. Now, back to 2D for 1 second. All right, what I want to start off with right now is building our background and our midground. We'll take a look at that. I'll show you how the perspective works and how easy it is without a line of code. I'll show you how easy it is to get everything going. All right, down here we can see the sprites. We already discussed them very briefly. You can ignore this little arrow now. This is just showing, it's actually showing the actual, what the image itself is and where the borders are, etc., and the information as a top node, as a top layer. You can ignore it for now. Just close it up. We don't really care about this additional view. We might care about some of it later on, and we'll take a look at that, but for now, we don't care. All right? There's several different ways to add an image or to add an asset to your game. I can simply take this and I can drag it and drop it in here, or I can take it and drag it and drop it in my hierarchy. And either way, I'm going to end up with, let's zoom in on it a little bit, I'm going to end up with the image being, or sorry, the file being in place. It's called background, and I've now got a couple of additional nodes. So originally, this thing here only had no real node types, it just had the actual information about the image. By dragging it and dropping it into your hierarchy or into your game, you end up with a couple of different nodes attached. Our transform node, which means it's a standard transform node. I can move this all about, use it with its position, rotation, and its scale. I've also got in here my sprite renderer, which is what is allowing this image to be rendered. Okay, we're going to take a look at a few things in this in 1 second. This right here is my game view and how everything is showing up in the game. Okay. Let's go back to our 3D view for 1 second here. Let's zoom back. So right there, this backwards, that's right way right there. Right there is our actual image. Now, we're in perspective, as I remember I told you. If I move this thing back and forth, you can see in the actual game view the image moving back and forth on the screen. That is because we have perspective selected. Watch what happens. Let me move this all the way back here. See how nice and small it is. Watch what happens if I move this back into orthographic. Boom, no depth, okay? Depth is lost. So that's why we had it switched over. Let me switch this back to perspective. Okay, so we are going to use that concept, this ability to make depth, to make the depth matter, to make our parallax. So the first thing I'm going to do, with my image selected, my background selected, I'm going to move this back to, let's say, 100. Okay, it's 100 units away now. Much, much smaller. It no longer is a background. It no longer fills my game view, and that's not exactly what I want. This background is supposed to fill up the entire game view. That's what they're going to see in the background. That's what the people are going to see in the background of the image, all right, of the game itself. So what I want to do is, after I've positioned this many units away, you can choose a number. It doesn't really matter what the number is. It's just to give you parallax. The farther back it goes and the closer it is to the camera will adjust how much parallax we're seeing. I just chose 100 randomly. I want to make sure that this background still fills the entire screen. So I'm going to try scaling this. Let's try 10. Perfect. I only scaled it in X and Y. In 2D, X and Y is our plane of interest. There is no information in scaling in Z because this is a plane. It's a flat plane. So scaling the Z will do nothing. I can make this 1,000 million and it doesn't change anything. All right, so just leave that as 1. Okay, so scaling 10 in the X and the Y makes this thing fill my entire screen in my game view, and that's what I want. It might not even be the right number, but I'm assuming it's okay for now. It looks good. 10. All right. Let's look through here. Let's go down a little bit a little bit lower. We've got a sorting layer, and we're going to discuss sorting layers in a short bit. We're not going to discuss them right now. For now, you can leave this on the default sorting layer. But what does that mean? The default sorting layer. The sorting layer is what the renderer uses to determine, like the order in the sorting layer is what the renderer uses to determine what is on top of what. What image goes on top of which image. So when it's putting the background in place, you don't want the background to be drawn over top of the character. You don't want the background to be drawn over top of the enemies, for example, because you'd never see them. So order in layer is an important number here. The smaller this number, so for example, -10, it'll be rendered first, meaning it gets rendered and then everything else gets rendered on top of it. You can make this any number you want. I'm assuming. I have never tried making it 1 gabillion or anything like that, but you can make it -10, for example. Anything that is labeled with the order in layer as -9 will be drawn on top of this. Anything with -8 will be drawn on top of that, and so on and so on and so on. This is my background. I want it to be the farthest from the camera and always drawn in the very, very back. Okay? That's my background. Let's do the exact same thing now with the midground. So the midground, what we're going to use is we're going to use this asset right here, midground. All right? You can once again either drag it and drop it in here, or if I'm in 2D mode, boom, I can drag it and drop it in here. Okay, so there, I did that. Now, the difference you can see between dragging it in the hierarchy view right here and dragging it in here is evident in here, the transform itself. When I dragged and dropped the background in here, everything took place at the origin. It was automatically set at the origin. Dragging it and dropping it onto the actual scene view puts it into kind of a random position. All right, I want this to be at the origin as well. So I can either go in here and I can adjust these numbers and say 0. Or if I want to reset, everything at once, I just closed that by accident. If you want to reset everything at once, you can go to the transform node all the way across this little tiny gear right here, push the button and say reset, and it'll automatically put everything at the origin. Okay? And we can see it at the origin right here in the game as well. Now, I don't want it actually at the depth of 0, because that is where my final platform is probably going to go. My foreground platform is probably going to go. So let's put this partway between 0 and 100. Let's put it at 50 is fine. All right. Now, once again, we've got ourselves a much smaller version. Not exactly what we want. Let's try making it bigger. Let's try making it 3. Is that enough? And 3. Oh, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. And I can move this up and down a little bit later on. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it 4. 4 and 4. All right. There we go. So we're going to adjust where these are located in a while, once we actually have the position of our platform set and the position of our character set. So we're going to actually drag those around in a little bit. But for now, that is our background and our foreground. We do want to change one more thing. We want to change this sorting layer. And once again, this is going to be the second farthest thing, so I'm going to put it at -9. So my background is at -10. My midground is at -9, which means the midground will always be drawn over top of the foreground. And to clean things up here, I can actually just go through and change the name of this to, instead of background A, background. And I can change this here. Midground is fine. Background and midground. All right, so let's take a look right now at the concept of perspective. And we'll just take a look at this very, very quickly before I end this video. It's actually getting pretty long. It took a lot longer than I thought, so this might take a while to do. Anyway, with the camera itself selected right there and my transform tool selected, take a look at this game. When I go up and down, you can see that the foreground and, the midground and the background appear to be moving at different rates. And that's parallax. That's exactly what we want. We've got parallax for free without an ounce of code. All it took was changing this to perspective. And like I said, that's going to make a difference in how we do things in the future. But in my opinion, it is an awesome way to get parallax extremely fast and very easily. All right, everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I hope you guys understood it. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. I love answering your questions. I'll do my best to get to your stuff as often as I can. If you enjoyed it, let me know with a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, a thumbs down is perfectly fine. I don't care. You guys have your opinion. It's not going to affect whether or not I'm going to make these videos. I am going to make these videos for you. So, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't already done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.